My family betrayed me on my wedding day and secretly flew to Hawaii. I found out when I saw a Facebook post, a real family together, no one left out and smiling faces. I just liked the post and replied, "Fine, now you can pay without me," and left the chat. Later, I made a decision that shocked them. Now they're knocking on my door. "We're trying to talk. Please open up. We're your family." It was going to be the best day of my life. Everything was planned down to the last flower petal. My bride's family had flown in from 3 different states. Her cousins, her childhood friends, even her 90-year-old grandmother made it. But mine, my parents, my sister, my brother, they'd all called the week before, one by one, to say they tested positive for CO. They were so sorry and heartbroken to miss it. I didn't question it. I felt bad for them. I even sent them photos of the venue during rehearsal, the setup, the cake. I thought maybe it would make them feel included. The ceremony was smaller than I expected. My side of the aisle looked embarrassingly empty. If it weren't for my aunts, a few cousins, and some old friends from college, it would have felt like a school presentation instead of a wedding. I put on a brave face. My wife Lori kept me going. Her family stepped in like it was natural, treating me like I'd always been one of them. That part was beautiful, and through it all, the wedding felt real. Real. Like we'd stripped away the fake smiles and left only what mattered. Then came the next morning. I was sitting on the edge of our hotel bed, still in my undershirt, scrolling through Facebook. That's when I saw it. A whole group photo, bright sun, palm trees, everyone. My parents, my siblings, their spouses, even my cousin Jake, who supposedly had long coat, posing on a beach in Hawaii. I could hear the ocean in the background as if mocking me. The caption was burned into my skull. Real family together. No one left behind. I stared at it for what seemed like hours. There were hashtags, laughter in the comments, people saying how happy they looked, not one mention of me or my wedding. I didn't comment with anger, ease. They didn't respond. Not one of them. I spent the next 2 days finishing the paperwork with Lori and our officiant, helping her parents clean up the venue and finalizing our marriage license. I didn't say a word about what I'd seen. Not yet. But I went home the day before Lori did. Alone. You see, my family had been living in the house I had inherited from my grandfather. I let them stay there rentry while I was away on contracts all over the country. They always said it was our home, that they were grateful. My dad even told me once, "You're saving us, Ethan. You don't even know it." Now I knew. I changed the locks before they landed. I packed up every piece of their stuff. I gave them 7 days from the moment they walked in the door to find another place. They didn't scream. They didn't scream. They just looked at me like they didn't recognize the person standing in front of them. That's when I left and went to stay with Lori and her family. Now they're at my door, knocking. "We want to talk. Please open the door. We're your family." And I didn't say a word back, because this time they're going to learn what real family looks like. I thought they'd stay in Hawaii longer, maybe prolong the lie, slip back into reality as if nothing had happened. But on the 6th morning after the wedding, I woke up to the sound of suitcase wheels grinding on concrete. I stood behind the curtain in the upstairs bedroom, still in gym shorts, coffee in hand, and watched as their Uber rolled away, leaving them standing in front of the house like a sitcom family that took a wrong turn at the airport. My mother wore a pink flower lei. My sister had pigtails with beads in them. My brother had his arm wrapped around his girlfriend, and my father was already complaining about the heat. They all looked freshly tanned and well rested. My brother took out his keys. I didn't even blink. Click. Nothing. He tried again. Still nothing. Then came the confusion, as if it had never occurred to them that something might have changed. I could practically hear them working through the possibilities in their heads. Maybe the lock jammed. Maybe the batteries were dead. Maybe the house had a glitch. They knocked. Then the bell rang. I took another sip of coffee. After the 4th knock, I got a text message from my sister. What's wrong? Why won't the door open? I sent a message back. You have 7 days to leave. After that, you'll be evicted. I didn't say anything else. No hi. No, let's talk. No, we need to talk about what happened. Just 7 days. That night, they camped out on the porch like stray cats. My dad yelled at the windows a few times. Something about this still being their home. My mom cried. My brother called me a psychopath loud enough for the neighbors to hear. No one came outside. They knew what had happened. My neighbor, Miss Felton, texted me a heart emoji and said she was proud of me. The second day, they were still there, but quieter, fewer outbursts. They tried reason instead of noise. My mother left a note under the door. I never read it. The third day, they disappeared for most of the afternoon. Came back that night with burgers and fries, sitting in the backyard like it was a picnic. I watched them through the camera feed on my phone. They looked tired, excited, like maybe the sun had finally gotten to them. Then day 4 came, and I got a fraud alert from the bank. My card had been used at a cheap roadside motel 2 towns over. It was the joint account, an old debit card I'd forgotten even existed. I thought I'd shredded it when I switched banks. Apparently not. I called the bank and got the complete transaction log. It was like reading a confession in the receipts. 2 first-class tickets to Maui, 3 coach, 7 nights at a resort, 4 spa appointments, 1 snorkeling tour, jet ski rentals, brunch spots, lounges, souvenir shops, thousands of them, all charged to this account, my name on every charge. I sat there staring at the screen while Lori cooked dinner in the next room. I didn't tell her at first, not because I wanted to hide it, just because I didn't know how to say it without tearing something in half. They'd lied to me. That was one thing. They'd skipped my wedding. That was another. But they'd used my money to do it. That was something else entirely. I finally told Lori everything that night. The joint account, the charges, the lie about CO, all of it. She didn't say much, just took a deep breath, walked over to the cabinet, and poured me a whiskey. Then she said, "You know what you have to do." The next morning I started making phone calls. The eviction was already in motion. But now something else was coming, because I wasn't just going to throw them out of the house. I was going to make them pay for every last drink they had on that beach. They didn't leave on the 7th day. That morning, I drove by the house just to make sure they were still there. I didn't get out of the car. I just sat there across the street with the engine running while my mom paced the driveway in a bathrobe and my dad smoked a cigarette like it was the end of the world. The U-Haul was in the driveway, half filled. It looked like they'd started packing and just stopped, like maybe they thought I wasn't going to go through with it. At 4, the sheriff pulled up behind them. Civil process. Nothing dramatic. I'd filed all the proper forms. They were given an hour to leave, or they'd be forcibly removed. I didn't stick around to watch. I already knew how it would turn out. Instead, I went back to Lori's parents' house and opened my laptop. My attorney had everything ready. We were filing a civil suit against my parents and my sister, since her name had appeared on 2 of the charges. The basis: theft, mislocation of funds, and financial fraud. The account may have once had both of our names on it, but it was now legally mine, and I had proof that they had accessed it without permission. My attorney called it a softball case. He said they'd settle quickly, especially once they realized they were looking at possible criminal exposure. I didn't care about the money. I cared about the message. That night I got my first call from a number I hadn't blocked yet. My Aunt Sylvia. She was the one who showed up alone at the wedding, sat quietly on my side of the aisle, and hugged me longer than anyone else that day. She'd heard about my mom. I didn't want to answer, but I did. Sylvia didn't scream. She didn't beg. She just asked plainly what was going on. So I told her. Not everything, but enough. The lies, the Facebook post, the bank account, the motel. There was a long pause. Then she sighed and said, "I had a feeling something was wrong. They were bragging about the trip on Facebook before they even got back. They said they needed a break from all the stress of wedding planning. I thanked her and hung up. That conversation was enough to confirm another thing I'd suspected all along. They weren't even planning on coming. This wasn't a last-minute decision. It wasn't a moment of weakness. It was calculated. They knew they were skipping my wedding before the invitations were even sent out. The CO excuse was just a cover. After the eviction, they tried to reach me every way they could. Through fake numbers, through mutual friends, through Lori. My brother even emailed my boss. I shut everything down. Every call ignored, every number blocked, every sob story deleted. I stopped paying their utilities, canceled their phone plan, canceled every subscription associated with my name. This house had belonged to them for years. Now it was mine again. 2 weeks after the eviction, my lawyer called with an update. We'd reached a settlement, a partial refund, enough to cover the Hawaii fees plus legal fees. They agreed on one condition. I dropped the threat of criminal charges. I accepted, not because I was letting them off easy, but because I wanted something on paper that they had paid me back, something permanent, something they couldn't pretend never happened. I cashed the check and framed the receipt. And that was it. The next time I heard from them was 2 months later, late at night. Loud banging on the door. Lori and I were watching a movie when it started. She muted the TV. I checked the security camera. My dad, my mom, my sister, all three of them, looking thinner, pale, sweaty, desperate. My mom was crying. My dad was yelling, "We want to talk. Please open the door, we're your family." I didn't move, not even an inch, because by then I'd learned something important. Family isn't who shares your blood. It's who shows up when everyone else is smiling on a beach. For 2 weeks after that night, they kept showing up. Sometimes just my dad. Sometimes the whole trio. Always unannounced. Always acting like it was all some big misunderstanding that we just needed to talk through. They never said the words, "I'm sorry." Not once. Just a parade of excuses, like forgetting my wedding and robbing me blind, was a scheduling conflict. I never opened the door. Not once. The calls slowed. The texts dried up. Eventually, they stopped trying to get in. But then came the letters, handwritten, folded paper slipped under the door or left in the mailbox. My mom tried the guilt route. How much she missed me, how hard things had been, how families shouldn't punish each other. I didn't respond to those either. I just kept building. Lori and I worked on the house, turning it into something new. We knocked out the old dining room wall, repainted the entire second floor, landscaped the yard. For the first time in years, the place felt like my own. Then one day, I got an unexpected visit. It was Lori's uncle. He'd flown in from Illinois to see some clients and asked to stop by. I thought we'd chat about flooring or gardening, but instead, he sat down at the kitchen table with a strange look on his face. He said he was at a party 2 nights ago, some business thing, and ran into someone who used to know my dad, a former coworker. And apparently, my family didn't keep things as private as I thought. The coworker had mentioned how ungrateful I was, how I'd ruined everything by turning on them after all they did for me. Claimed I was having some kind of breakdown. And this was the part that got me. Told everyone that I had embezzled from my own family to pay for my wedding, and was now blaming them. That was the story that was going around. I wasn't surprised, but I was angry. And when I get angry, I get organized. The next morning, I made copies of the entire transaction record. Flights, Airbnb, the card trail. I compiled the messages, the bank records, the receipts. Then, I wrote a statement. Short. To the point. Brutal. I didn't post it on Facebook. That's where they lived. I mailed it to every person I knew they were gossiping to. I even paid extra to have it delivered with signature verification. The response was quiet, but effective. One by one, the mutuals began to go dark. No more likes on their posts, no comments, no miss you replies. The family image they worked so hard to protect was cracking under the pressure. Then came the big one. My cousin Lindsay, one of the golden ones, the one who used to host holidays at her house. She sent me a single message. I had no idea. I'm sorry, Ethan. We should have known. That was the beginning of the change. The settlement wasn't just about money anymore. It was a statement, a record, a scar with paperwork behind it. They couldn't lie their way out of it. But I wasn't done yet, because now they weren't just broke, they were sinking and fast, and I'd soon find out just how far they were willing to go to stay afloat. It started with a grocery receipt. Lori and I were budgeting, going over the usual monthly numbers, when she pointed out a transaction I didn't recognize. Green Path Insurance, $26,742. I blinked. The name rang a bell. After a few clicks, I realized it was my parents' car insurance. Still on autopay, still coming out of my account. I hadn't driven that car in years. Hadn't even seen it since I moved out of state. But there it was, quietly draining me as if it had permission. I didn't say anything out loud. I just opened a new browser tab and started pulling every financial string I hadn't already cut. Within an hour, it was like finding a spider's nest behind drywall. 2 active cell phone plans under the old family plan. One for my sister, one for my brother. A storage unit on the east side of town that had been auto-paying for 18 months. 3 streaming services. My brother's gym. A digital magazine subscription I hadn't read since college, but apparently my dad still used. All still connected to me. Even the Wi-Fi in their apartment was under my name. I had been the silent backbone of their life for years, paying for everything. No one ever said thank you. No one ever asked if it was too much. They just assumed I'd take care of it. I shut everything down that night. Every account, every plan, every payment, gone. I closed the joint account too. Took out the last of the money and moved it to a private bank. Then I changed all my passwords, froze my credit, set up fraud alerts. Anything they could use, I shut down. It felt surgical, cold, clean, but not silent. The next morning, I woke up to 13 missed calls. Voicemails, too. First, it was my mom, her voice cracking like she just had the wind knocked out of her. Then my dad, trying to pretend he wasn't angry. Then my sister, in full rage mode, calling me a snake and a spoiled brat and a few other things I won't bother to recount. At noon, Lori and I were sitting in the kitchen, eating leftovers, when the power flickered in the living room. At first, I thought it was a lightning storm. Then I remembered the Netflix account I had just deactivated had been logged in at their house. They were trying to watch TV and I turned off the world. The next night, they were back, pounding on Lori's front door. I didn't answer, but I watched from the upstairs window. My dad yelling something about losing the internet. My mom crying on the porch. My sister standing off to the side, looking at her phone like she wasn't part of this. They left after 10 minutes. The next day, Lori's dad told me he got a phone call from my dad. That was the last straw for him. He told them not to call again. He said he wouldn't have someone who would abandon their son and steal from him and pretend to be the victim. I didn't ask what else he said, but judging by how quickly the call stopped, I figured it wasn't polite. Then came the email. Subject line: "We have nothing left, Ethan." From my mom. She said they were 3 months behind on their rent, that their car was uninsured and about to be repossessed, that my dad was working out of libraries because the apartment had no Wi-Fi, that my sister was sleeping on a friend's couch after her phone was disconnected and she couldn't afford her share of the bills. She wrote, "You've made your point. You've proven whatever you needed to prove. Please stop." And for a minute, just a stupid, fleeting minute, I almost felt something. Not pity, just a flicker of the old habit, that internal reflex to step in, save the day, clean up the mess they made. But then I remembered the Facebook post. Real family together. No one left behind. And how I'd sat alone in the groom's room, tying my own tie because my dad wasn't there to help. I didn't reply. Instead, I printed out the email, put it in a folder I'd labeled evidence, and tucked it next to the lawsuit papers. Because a week later, someone knocked again. This time, it wasn't them. It was a man in a navy suit, holding an envelope. My father was suing me, claiming that the house I'd inherited had never been mine, that I had manipulated my dying grandfather, that he'd been promised the house years ago in a private conversation that no one could verify. It was a pathetic game, but not surprising. They weren't asking for forgiveness anymore. They were trying to take back the one thing they'd never been able to control. But this time, they would lose. Forever. The suit was dead on arrival. I handed the envelope to my lawyer, a quiet guy named Colson, who didn't blink when I told him the whole story. He flipped through the lawsuit, page by page, then looked up and said, "This isn't going anywhere. But we're not just going to kill it, we're going to bury it." And he did. Within 2 weeks, he filed a motion to dismiss with supporting documentation: the will, the deed, bank records, screenshots from the Hawaiian trip, the settlement agreement they'd already signed, proof that they'd been repaid for every penny they'd stolen. Forcibly, yes, but legally. The motion included one small add-on: a cease and desist order. If they kept harassing me, trying to spin the story, spreading lies to neighbors or friends or anyone else, we would escalate publicly, permanently. They didn't show up for the first hearing, or the second. Their case was dismissed. Just like that. I didn't gloat, didn't celebrate. Just felt done, like I'd finally put the last box in storage, locked the unit, and walked away. But I didn't go home right away. Instead, I drove to a quiet spot in the hills, just outside of town, where my grandfather used to take me fishing. There wasn't much left of the old dock, just some rotten planks and some bleached wood. But the view was still the same. I sat there for a while, thinking about what he would have said. I don't think he would have cared about the money or the house. I think he would have looked at me and asked a simple question: "Are you okay with what you did?" And the truth was, yes, I was. When I got back to the house, Lori was waiting for me on the porch. She didn't ask me how the hearing went. She already knew. She just handed me a cold drink and sat next to me as the sun set. A week later, a letter arrived. No return address. Handwritten. It was from my sister. She said she was done with everyone. That after everything fell apart, she saw it for what it was. That she never should have gone to Hawaii. Never should have touched my money. That she was couch surfing now, looking for work, trying to start over. She didn't ask for money. She just said, "I understand if you don't write back." I just had to say it. I read the letter twice. Then I put it in a drawer. Not with the lawsuit papers, not with the receipts, just by itself. I still didn't know if I believed her. But I knew this. Forgiveness doesn't mean opening a door. Sometimes it just means building a fence and deciding who you let in from now on. And those who stood with me at the altar, the ones who cheered and clapped and cried while my real family posed on a beach, they didn't just show up that day. They stayed. And for the first time in my life, I realized something. Sometimes the family you choose shows up when the one you were born into disappears. And that's where I left them. Not with revenge, but with a clean break and silence. Finally, on the other side of the door,